The mining colony on Dracaros 7 wasn't supposed to have dragons. That's what the planetary survey had promised when Nancy first signed up for the xenobiology team. 3 years ago, minimal fauna, the report had stated. Mostly microbial life and some insect analogs. The survey, as Parker had discovered 6 months into his engineering contract, was catastrophically wrong. Parker knelt beside the geological scanner, his weathered hands adjusting the calibration settings for the 15th time that morning. The equipment had been acting up since the solar flares began, and if he didn't get accurate readings soon, the entire mining operation would have to shut down. Corporate wouldn't like that. Corporate never liked delays. A soft chirping sound made him pause. He looked down to find 2 small creatures tugging at the hem of his thermal coat with tiny, translucent claws. They were no bigger than house cats, with scales that shimmered between copper and gold in the harsh artificial lights of the worksite. Their wings delicate, membrane-thin things were folded against their serpentine bodies, and their eyes, large and luminous, stared up at him with what could only be described as desperate hope. Dragon hatchlings, the indigenous species that supposedly didn't exist. Not now, little ones, Parker murmured, gently trying to shoo them away. He had work to do, quotas to meet, and a reputation for reliability that he'd spent 20 years building across a dozen colony worlds. The hatchlings didn't budge. Instead, they pressed closer, their chirping growing more insistent. One of them, the slightly smaller of the twins, began to shiver violently. Parker frowned. The temperature outside the thermal shields was dropping fast. Dracaros 7's binary suns were setting, and when they did, the temperature could plummet to -70°C in under an hour. These creatures, whatever they were, wouldn't survive the night without shelter. He glanced at his scanner, still recalibrating. 5 minutes, maybe 10. With a resigned sigh, Parker shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around the 2 hatchlings, bundling them against his chest. They immediately snuggled into the warmth, their shivering subsiding as they tucked their small heads beneath the fabric. He could feel their rapid heartbeats against his ribcage, tiny, frantic drumbeats of life clinging to existence. Just for a bit, he told them, returning his attention to the scanner. Then you're on your own. That's when Nancy found him, Parker. Her voice cut through the wind like a plasma torch. She jogged over from the research tent, her breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. Have you seen? Oh my God, are those what I think they are? Parker didn't look up from his work. Depends. What do you think they are? Draconis dracarosi, Nancy breathed, her eyes wide with scientific fervor. The theoretical apex predator we've been searching for. Parker, those are critically endangered. There are maybe 200 left on the entire planet. Where did you find them? They found me. He tapped the scanner screen, watching the subsurface mineral readings slowly come into focus. Showed up about 10 minutes ago. Cold, hungry, probably. Nancy crouched beside him, her hands hovering near the coat bundle but not quite touching. Their mother must have been killed, probably by one of the mining drones. Parker, these hatchlings are priceless from a research standpoint. We need to get them to the biolab immediately. Can't. Working. Can't. Nancy's voice rose an octave. Parker, this is the discovery of a lifetime. These creatures are cold, scared, and currently not interfering with my job. Parker finally looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. The scanner needs another few minutes. Then I'll help you move them. But right now, they're warm and safe, and that's what matters. Nancy opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She'd worked with Parker long enough to recognize that particular tone, the one that meant his mind was made up, and no amount of scientific enthusiasm or corporate pressure would budge him. Instead, she sat down beside him in the frost-covered dirt and pulled out her portable analyzer. Fine, but I'm running preliminary scans while we wait. They worked in companionable silence, to humans huddled against the alien cold while twin dragon hatchlings slept peacefully. In a bundle of thermal fabric, the scanner beeped its completion just as the first sun dipped below the horizon. Parker checked the readings, nodded in satisfaction, and transmitted the data to the main colony hub. Quota met. Job done. All right, he said, carefully gathering the coat and its precious cargo. Let's get these to somewhere warmer. The biolab was a 15-minute walk across the compound. Nancy led the way, practically bouncing with excitement as she rattled off facts about Draconis Dracrosi, their diet, their life cycle, their complex social structures. Parker listened with half an ear, more focused on keeping the hatchlings comfortable. Halfway to the lab, one of them poked its head out from the coat and chirped at him. Not distressed this time, almost affectionate. "They've bonded with you," Nancy observed, a smile tugging at her lips. "That's actually quite rare. Dragons typically only bond with their maternal parent. I'm not their parent. You provided warmth when they were cold, protection when they were vulnerable. In dragon terms, Parker, you might as well be." Parker grunted non-committally, but his grip on the bundle tightened just slightly. When they reached the biolab, Nancy had already prepared an incubation chamber with heat lamps and a feeding station. The hatchlings were reluctant to leave Parker's coat, but eventually, the promise of food lured them into their new temporary home. As Nancy ran her tests and cataloged her findings, Parker stood by the observation window, watching the twins curl around each other in sleep. "You know," Nancy said softly, coming to stand beside him, "the board is going to want to relocate them to a core world research facility. Better equipment, more resources, and strip them away from their home planet, from the only environment they've ever known." Nancy sighed. "I'll fight it, but I can't promise anything." Parker was quiet for a long moment. "Then, humans have always had this habit of taking things that don't belong to us, resources, land, even creatures that just wanted to survive." He tapped the glass gently, and both hatchlings stirred, looking toward him with sleepy recognition. "Maybe it's time we tried something different. Maybe we protect instead of take." Nancy smiled. "I'll draft the conservation proposal tonight. With your field notes about their behavior, we might actually have a case." "Good." Parker turned away from the window, pulling his coat back on. It smelled faintly of copper and smoke, now dragon scent. "I've got an early shift tomorrow. Those mineral deposits won't map themselves, Parker," Nancy called as he reached the door. "Thank you for not being too busy to care." He paused, glancing back at the sleeping hatchlings one more time. "Wasn't busy," he said simply. "Just working. And sometimes, the work that matters most is the kind you don't get paid for outside." Both suns had set completely, and the stars of the Dracaros system blazed across the sky like scattered diamonds. Parker pulled his coat tighter and headed back toward his quarters, leaving footprints in the frost dot behind him in the warm glow of the biolab. To dragon hatchlings dreamed of the warmth of a stranger's kindness the most human thing of all. End.